Last but not least for the day, we have Roger Barnes from Atlassian. When Roger isn't moonlighting as a product manager based out of Sydney, he is DJ Kanban. Has anyone heard of DJ Kanban before? Yeah, awesome, awesome. His alter ego will be making an appearance at Bash tomorrow night, so hopefully you guys will be able to make it. But before then, Roger is going to be talking about succeeding with DevOps behind the firewall. So please welcome Roger to the stage.
Thanks, man. Hi, everyone. Welcome to DevOps Detention. That's what it feels like, at least. It's after hours and you're sitting at a desk. Thank you for coming along. Nearly 20 years ago, a bright-eyed young developer walked into a software company, the ink still wet on his degree. He didn't realize at the time that a team he was joining was unusual. While the tools were far more primitive by today's standards, the team's culture around continuous improvement and automated delivery was relatively unique. They successfully deployed a mission-critical application across the region every single day. And they still do this today, albeit using far more modern tools. My name is Roger Barnes, and I was that bright-eyed young developer. A lot has happened in the software world since the year 2000, but the idea of incremental delivery of high-quality software at speed is not really a new one. Many practices, though, are now only just gaining mainstream adoption. I'd like to share with you today the elements of culture, processes, and tools that come together under the modern guise of DevOps, and how Atlassian can help you deliver value more often. There's a common perception that DevOps is only for new cloud-first companies. We're going to focus on what a DevOps transformation looks like for those who choose to host their tools behind the firewall. 6 years ago, in Wall Street Journal, investor Mark Andreessen stated, "Software is eating the world," an iconic statement on how software was disrupting every traditional industry at that time. And these days, the idea that every company is a software company is a bit of a cliche. No matter what your industry, though, you are expected to be reimagining your business to make sure that you're not the next local taxi company or hotel chain caught completely off guard by your equivalent of Uber or Airbnb. Today, software really is programming the world, according to Andreessen. We are becoming increasingly reliant on software and services for everything, even in markets that previously didn't make sense before, like physical goods. In the last 10 years, we've seen Agile and Git adoption skyrocket. In Agile, all roles on a development team come together to prioritize, scope, and support one another. And with Git, branching and merging has never been so easy. Decentralized version control systems are enabling teams to move faster than ever with higher quality. According to the 2016 State of Software report that Atlassian ran, 77% of teams report using Agile methodologies. And 78% have moved to a distributed version control system like Git. This pattern is not just seen in small software teams, but across large enterprise teams as well. I'm sure most of you are also practicing these processes in various capacities. While Agile and Git are great, they have been around for a while. And we have to ask ourselves what lies ahead for software development, and is there a new opportunity to improve? And so let's just sort of, by show of hands, who still has incidents and who still has things catching fire? Everybody, I'm guessing. Probably should be a more specific question. And it is true, basically, that while Agile and Git are great, they don't really prevent silos and walls of confusion still forming. Traditional development and operations teams do tend to work in silos, limiting the amount of inter-team communication. And it doesn't prevent ops teams from being woken up at 2 a.m. to work on a problem they have no context about. So while Agile and Git are great prerequisites for DevOps, there is still a lot more to building a culture that allows for cross-functional teams to maximize efficiency, collaborate, and innovate. Growing teams must become more collaborative, else they will cease to exist. So the question really is, what's next after Agile? And we think the answer to this is the movement we call DevOps. So for many of you here, you might be familiar with the term, but let's try and level set a little bit to understand what it means exactly. DevOps is a culture where dev and operations collaborate to build a faster, more reliable release pipeline. You'll often see this manifest with changes to the software delivery pipeline and infrastructure. DevOps is underpinned by 3 principles. First, there is flow or workflow, making work visible across groups, limiting work in progress, and reducing handoffs. Then there is amplifying feedback. We want to aim for fast feedback, catching failures before they make it downstream, and the earlier you can do that, the better. Finally, there's continuous experimentation, creating a culture where learning and taking risks and learning from failure is viewed as a step forward, not a step back. Daily work becomes better through constant and small experimentation and open-mindedness. And it takes a team. If you've hired someone with DevOps in their title, you're probably not quite doing it right, unless their job is to give everyone that capacity. It's really everyone's jobs. Comparing this to a traditional enterprise model where dev and ops teams sit on the opposite side of the fence, it's a complete culture shift and a decision to be more transparent, understanding, and cooperative. What we can see here is that there is a strong correlation between teams practicing DevOps and delivering value. They spend more time on R&D than working on unplanned work or rework. They have faster recoveries from failure, they deploy more frequently to production, and they have shorter lead times. These insights and more can be found in the State of DevOps report. It's a fantastic piece of research with insights from over 20,000 software and IT professionals. And the survey for 2017 is currently underway and should be available sometime soon. Atlassian is excited to be sponsoring this report again. So what this all comes down to is some sort of DevOps value chain. We do this because we want to have faster time to market. We do this because we want to get faster feedback and make our products faster, better, quicker. At the same time, we want to maintain our high quality of releases. We also actually want the results that come from this, such as happier teams and happier customers. And this leads to the all-important competitive advantage that can be gained by moving faster than your competitors. Hayneedle is one such example of a company that has embraced DevOps, and they've done so with self-hosted tools. Hayneedle is a leading online retailer for home furnishings and decor. This 500-plus employee enterprise was using disparate tools that did not integrate well together, had different UIs, lacked the features and flexibility needed to fit their continuously changing processes and growing teams. In order to collaborate on an issue between dev and IT teams, they would recreate the issue ticket within each system, effectively siloing communication between teams. They created a new platform, starting with JIRA Service Desk and JIRA Software, Confluence, Bitbucket, and Bamboo. With Atlassian tools, they were able to automate and streamline a DevOps process, break down those silos, and move towards a faster, more efficient development process. So let's dig in a little bit deeper about approaching DevOps. The journey starts with a culture of collaboration. Atlassian, we think, is the culture and collaboration layer of DevOps. We put teams first, providing tools and guidance to successfully implement these practices. The Atlassian stack of tools helps foster a collaborative culture by offering complete visibility from issue to source. These tools can speed up your releases by automating menial tasks and defining set processes, can help accelerate time to resolution with faster feedback loops and the ability to swarm on incidents, and we help you prioritize when unplanned work arises. So let's dive in. We talked before about the culture, processes, and tools that underpin DevOps. These are all critical components and must be sort of balanced together. In terms of practices, a motivated team needs to have methods in place that allow collaboration to thrive, and having the right tools at your disposal helps speed up your releases by automating these tasks and processes. They're a complementary and dependent set of ingredients. A lack of coverage in any one area can cause friction in the others, and the whole effort can fail. Now let's look closely at each of these steps, starting with culture. Culture is the foundation on which every successful team is built. Does your culture foster experimentation, encourage transparency? Do members of your team or organization feel comfortable approaching one another with problems? Do product incidents lead to finger pointing instead of learning? Taking steps to build a culture suitable for DevOps is the first step, building a shared responsibility and empathy across teams. We do both of these things at Atlassian. And of course, this goes in hand with other tactics, but without it, everything else will become much harder. So if you've identified some dysfunction in your team, where do you begin? One small but impactful way to initiate culture change is to run workshops that identify areas you can improve amongst your various dev and ops teams. We do this often at Atlassian, so much so that we decided to write the process down. And as you would have heard, we recently introduced the Atlassian Team Playbook. We went one step further for DevOps and just recently published a special guide to the usage of the playbook specifically for DevOps. You can find out more at atlassian.com/DevOps. The guide promotes the use of Service Team's Health Monitor to identify areas for improvement. For example, making sure that responsibilities are evenly balanced across team members, or making sure that they have a shared understanding of current projects. Once you've identified areas for improvement, you can move on to recommended plays in each area. For example, if you've uncovered that your team is constantly running into the same problems during an incident or a release, it's time to implement a retrospective or an incident postmortem. Running health monitors and plays can help your teams move forward towards a culture ready for DevOps. As a quick aside, Confluence Server 6.1 includes a range of these plays bundled as blueprints. These templates give you everything you need on the website, but running plays from Confluence blueprints makes this far more accessible and easy for people to do. And as a bonus, the team playbook blueprints are available in all the bundled languages we make available. Let's move on to the next essential step, practices. Culture is huge, but so are the practices you put into place. Agile, distributed version control, and continuous integration and delivery are prerequisites. These things don't necessarily happen one after the other. It's usually a concurrent effort, but any of these changes reduce process friction and help in bringing about the change in how your dev and ops teams actually do work together. So let's take a closer look. Agile, obviously, is a key precursor to succeeding with DevOps. If your planning and development process can't work in short iterations, then you'll have nothing to deploy and operate on in short cycles. If you've not started with Agile yet, or if the team health monitor suggests that improvements are in order in that space, then this is a great place to start. We've pulled together a great set of assets that you can take a look at, best practices and guides on our Agile microsite, atlassian.com/agile. You can also still move towards DevOps without something like DVCS or Git in particular, but it again will be much harder. DVCS enables quick iterations with changes managed in isolation through short-lived branches and easy merging. All things you're going to need in a lean DevOps environment. We also have provided guidance here as well. Check out our Git microsite at atlassian.com/git. It's helped over 1 million people so far on their journey to DVCS. Lastly, but certainly not the least in the three underpinning pillars, is continuous integration and delivery. In DevOps, automation and deploying often is the goal, the basis of which is a sound continuous integration pipeline. Automation is critical to DevOps, and there are a bunch of tools out there that do automation. At some point, there are some tasks that need to be done by humans, and JIRA tickets become the translation between machines and the people that do the work. We have some help for you here in this place at atlassian.com/continuous delivery. Finally, after bringing all of these practices together, having Dev and Ops work more closely becomes a more manageable undertaking. To complement the three other sites, we're now providing material at atlassian.com/devops to help with the transformation of your teams. In particular, we've just published a DevOps maturity model, which helps you self-assess not just your team's culture, but the overall set of practices that you've adopted so far and where you can go to next. So that's a whole lot of stuff. But Agile, Git, CI/CD, and a team playbook is getting you only part of the way there. What are you supposed to do now, and how can you make the transition to all these things easier? This is where tools can come in. So far, we've talked about two of the three principles, culture and processes. What is unique about doing DevOps when you aren't allowed to develop in the cloud is an interesting question, though. All of these principles, in theory, can be applied behind the firewall just as they can for those doing cloud-based development. There are some small differences, but just as I was doing many years ago, being on a self-hosted platform doesn't have to hold you back. Concepts like flow, amplification of feedback, and continuous experimentation all still apply. There are things you can do like dog fooding in your local environment. Even if you release a packaged product every 6 months, that doesn't mean you can't release it in some other smaller way on a more regular basis. Another example would be an early access or beta program. All in all, we're trying to solve problems using software by providing self-service and reusable workflows. So let's look at these focus areas in a bit more detail. Being internal or behind the firewall doesn't mean you have to be slow. You can still boost productivity through tight communication across teams and easy access to information. Atlassian's products in particular do this already, whether you're in the cloud or server. You should also be able to measure your success. You can check how often you release. You can look at what your defect rates are. You can even measure things like team happiness. That doesn't even really need a tool. And you can also identify and remove pipeline friction. Just as you do agile retrospectives for your planning and your development process, you can look at the broader picture and find improvements there as well. Modern CI and CD really enables teams to improve in all of these areas as well. That fast feedback and shared responsibility comes from having that information flowing back and forth. Also, integrations are really important. Bringing problems to the attention of developers early in the process by shifting them left through the toolset helps people get information when it's needed, or even sooner than it used to be available. And finally, there's the idea of experimentation versus control. A lot of people think about compliance as being the enemy of DevOps. It's something that has to slow down teams, that has to stifle innovation, and that doesn't have to be the case. We do think that software compliance and security can be made a consistent and cost-effective practice without slowing down team velocity or impinging upon the ability to innovate. Basically, what you need to do in this case is give people freedom where it is safe to do so, and really focus your regulatory controls and efforts at the point that it really matters. For example, you might let people branch quite a lot in Git without locking it down, but then require a very strict compliance and review process as you merge to master. At Atlassian, we see DevOps as a complete software development cycle. Each phase flows into the other, breaking through silos and informing key stakeholders along the way. Let's walk through this with an example. We're going to take the hypothetical Teams in Space company and go through a DevOps story. First, we add tasks to a backlog. You saw earlier at the keynote that backlog for Kanban projects was announced as being available in JIRA Server. And this is a really powerful thing that just simplifies both the planning and the execution phases in JIRA. Oops. Apologies. And now the development team kicks off their work in the next sprint, or in the case of Kanban, just in the normal course of things. Again, this starts in JIRA, where you can already create a branch from a JIRA issue. This takes the work you need to do and pops you over into Bitbucket. In Bitbucket, the code change is created and can be reviewed by the team in a pull request. Pull requests are a vital part of workflow, especially in a DevOps context. Pull requests get team members talking, sharing knowledge and responsibility, and catching bugs that make it through your CI process. And this is not a bad place to even have ops involved as well. If you implement one thing in your software development process, pull requests is something we strongly recommend. And in Bitbucket Server 5.0, which has just come out this week, we've added some improvements that we think really boost this overall capabilities to be able to move fast and have high developer productivity. The first example we have here is repository shortcuts. These let you add to your repository links to your JIRA Agile board, to your Bamboo instance, to your HIP chat room, anything relevant to the code that you're working on. This helps new developers figure out where things are quickly, and it helps seasoned developers not to have to poke around finding things and managing bookmarks everywhere. We also released, I think it was back in November, iterative review for pull requests. Iterative review really helps people keep track of changes in the pull request as they happen over time. Here you can see that a user has marked a pull request as needing work, and the author has then gone in and added 2 commits. Now when the reviewer returns, they can see just the 2 commits that were made since they last reviewed, instead of having to trawl through the entire diff all over again. And this really helps teams focus on making sure that their feedback both has been reviewed and that they haven't missed something as well. Where's that gone? And I'd also like to call out that there are integrations that you might not know about out in the world that can also help with this. This example is from one of our ecosystem vendors called MyBex. They've written an integration with SonarQube. SonarQube produces coverage and static analysis information, and their integration brings that information out of your build system and into pull requests. So at the same time that people are reviewing and collaborating on code, you can also see what automated systems are telling you about it. You may have lack of coverage in a method or some sort of warning that hasn't been thought about. Usually this gets buried and looked at only periodically. So now let's jump over to Bamboo, our CI and CD tool. Obviously, at its core, Bamboo is great for automation in general, but there are some things that we've done in Bamboo 6.0 that we'd like to call out in particular. The first of which is pull request-based builds. So in the past, we've had plan branches, which are awesome for building all the branches in your Git repository. But sometimes you don't want to run that many puilds, and your compute resources are precious. And maybe you've decided not to run plan branches automatically as a result at all. So with with pull request-based builds, you can now trigger a build in Bamboo when a pull request is created in Bitbucket Server. The added benefit here is we will by default also merge your pull request on the build machine and run tests over that, which means you can be far more confident that when that pull request does merge, that it's going to do so cleanly and that you're not going to have build failures in your master branch. Again, there's different kinds of development that happen where ecosystem vendors and other integrations can come in. Functional testing is a great example. Here we can see a browser stack implementation that runs browser stack, which is a functional testing framework that helps so you don't have to run lots of Selenium and browser-based tests yourself for your web applications. And Bamboo isn't just for Java or web-based applications either. A lot of people have told us that they want to do mobile development. And in Bamboo 6.0, we released Fastlane integration. Fastlane allows you to build and deploy macOS and iOS-based apps. And now with this integration into Bamboo, you can run a lane which does builds and deployments of your mobile applications, bringing that up a level in the Bamboo world. So that's Bamboo. Well, no, it's not. If you're in the keynote, you would have seen configuration as code. For anyone who already has Bamboo, this is probably really big news. For those of you who haven't, this is still really good news. In the past, you would have to point and click your way through Bamboo to create your plans and update them over time. There was no version history or anything like that. Now, with Bamboo specs in Bamboo 6.0, you can express your build as code, which means you can compose it, you can version track it, and you can not have to click around all the time to keep it up to date. So let's see what that looks like. Here we have an empty Bamboo project, just so there's nothing up my sleeves. And then over in our IDE, we can use a Java-based development environment, writing Java, Groovy, or similar, to express our build using plans, stages, and tasks as we see fit. In this case, we're writing a simple example with a script task that just echoes success. And then we run that, and it basically runs against Bamboo, and then adds or updates the existing plan if there is one already. What we're basically trying to do here is give the power of Bamboo's structured stages, jobs, and tasks into code. Now, this is our first foray into this. There's a lot more we can do. In particular, we're planning to make it easier to make this much tightly integrated with your actual code. So instead of having to write this in your IDE and run it, you would be able to commit it and push it with the rest of your code changes and have the build respond accordingly. But the result is basically all of this information being entered without having to point and click through the interface. And finally, everything connects back to JIRA, as you're probably familiar already if you've used the tools. You can see commits, builds, pull requests, everything in the JIRA interface. And this becomes really useful at release time. If you aren't doing already automated releases and you have some sort of manual process, you can review that in JIRA Software. The Release Hub shows you the issues that are in that release and any development status that may be a bit out of whack in terms of that status. And again, Bamboo can step in with the continuous deployment side of things as well. I want to call out here another integration that exists in the deployment world. Utility, Stefan here is the man behind it, provides you with AWS deployment tasks. And we'd love to see more of these, and we're working on more of these integrations that get you to more modern deployment targets, whether you're behind the firewall, private cloud, or public cloud. So what if an incident occurs? We haven't walked through that much of the steps yet. So imagine an incident comes in. HipChat's a really great place to consolidate the team's communications, and systems and tools can also be part of that conversation. Here, PagerDuty, as an example integration, has notified the team that there's an issue in production. What happens as a result is a service desk ticket is created, and this notifies the developers of the issue. And that will flow into the development process we saw earlier. And perhaps there's a longer-term fix involved for that. But in the meantime, the team needs to swarm on the issue. Firstly, things go to status page. Now, status page isn't a self-hosted tool, but this is the one situation where even if everything else is behind the firewall, you probably don't want to have a self-hosted tool handling incidents because the thing that might be down is your own infrastructure. The team also has to swarm on the actual problem. And so they find in Confluence a knowledge base article that describes how they might fix this particular problem. And in this case, they're going to add an extra node to the cluster and fire everything up. The issue they raised earlier will get handled in the next sprint to be actually fixed properly. And then finally, the team walks through an incident post-mortem. Dev and Ops get together and they can put their postmortem into Confluence. They can take the HipChat room history as an audit trail of what happened, and then think about what they can do next time better. So let's quickly walk through some of the things that we've seen here. In JIRA Software, Server, and Data Center, we've now got the backlog for Kanban projects, which makes development faster. In Bitbucket Server and Data Center 5.0, we've got iterative review and repository shortcuts. And a couple of things that we didn't see in the demo are things like in-browser editing, which ops teams can really get into. They don't need big IDEs necessarily to make small changes, and this can make their lives much easier. And we also have a verify committer hook. Git provides you very, very flexible, open ways to do work, and sometimes you need to rein that in a little bit without getting in the developer's way. The verify committer hook just makes sure that commits come from the people that are pushing them. And there are other things that we have in the works to make sure that you can apply different levels of control over the Git commits that you receive into your history so that you can rely on it in future. And then in Bamboo, we saw config as code, or Bamboo specs, so that build configuration can be composed and versioned by developers. Pull request-aware builds make sure that you build the right thing at the right time. And we've improved the iOS and macOS build support through Fastlane integration. So we just took a really quick walk through the infinity loop here, following the planning development path all the way around to deployment and operation, and what happens with monitoring and feedback when an incident occurs. This is a common example of how we've seen teams implement DevOps at Atlassian, and we've seen huge improvements in both incident management, quality releases, and maintaining that culture of collaboration. Looking at the infinity loop, you can see that Atlassian does a lot, but we don't absolutely claim to do it all. DevOps encapsulates a lot that we didn't mention, like containerization, orchestration, monitoring, test management, and so on. And that's where integrations really shine. No matter what you're looking to do, it's likely that Atlassian tools will have an integration available for you. In the Atlassian marketplace, you can find integrations for your favorite tools and a wide variety of add-ons to customize and automate your workflow, including for the behind the firewall or server products. Some examples include, for code quality and compliance, things like SonarQube, BlackDuck, and SourceClear. They scan for open source, for vulnerabilities, coverage, static analysis. For continuous integration, there are various integrations for building macOS, iOS, functional testing, and Docker images. For continuous deployment, we integrate with Puppet, Terraform, Amazon, Ansible, amongst others. And finally, there's application monitoring and management, the things that tell you when something's wrong or right about your instance or your production environment, with things like AppDynamics, Xmatters, Splunk, and PagerDuty as examples. And there's other ways that third parties can help as well. We have Atlassian Partner Network. They can help you a lot with this stuff, and they have the experience as well with other companies to apply best practices. They can provide hands-on assistance with everything from culture to processes to tools. They can customize solutions for you that work with your environment, and they can provide those best practices and experience. So as you've seen, DevOps is an evolution of culture, processes, and tools, building on top of an established practice like Agile, DVCS, and continuous delivery. It promotes greater team collaboration, automation, and experimentation. Atlassian is here to help you no matter where you are in your DevOps journey, and scale it up in your organization. Using our self-hosted offerings, you can establish the foundations of collaboration needed to succeed with DevOps. And you can benefit today from the capabilities, new improvements, and integrations that you've just seen. And you can definitely expect to see more from us in future. So in conclusion, no matter what industry or organization you're working in, the reality is that the world is moving ever faster, despite an increasingly complex world. When you get back to your office, use our DevOps resources to work out where you're at and where you could improve your team's culture, processes, and tools towards faster delivery times, happier devs, high-quality software, and that all-important competitive advantage. If you'd like to learn more about DevOps while you're here, please come to our product booths and visit our partners on the expo floor. I walked around before and saw quite a few people have DevOps up on their displays, and they definitely have experience that can help there. So thank you.